We are here at the Live Lounge at our FastMarkets Lithium Supply and Battery Raw Materials Conference. And we're interviewing a range of very impressive guests from across the supply chain. I'm Kisa Shreen, your host and guide through this dynamic world of lithium and batteries. As a business and financial author, keynote speaker, and risk and sustainability consultant, I've shared my insights on Bloomberg, CNBC, and CBS. And now I'm super excited about getting our guests' insights. We're now joined by Amanda Harsas, Finance Director at Atlantic Lithium. Amanda is a senior finance executive with a track record of over 25 years of experience in strategic finance, business transformation, commercial finance, customer and supplier negotiations, and company secretarial and capital management. And prior to joining Atlantic Lithium, Amanda worked in several sectors, including healthcare, insurance, retail, and professional services across Asia, Europe, and the US. Amanda, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So we want to start off just hearing a bit more about how you got to where you are, and specifically what fascinated me is the supplier negotiations piece. Whenever we think about negotiating, we think about business supplier, interviewing for perhaps a role, a job, taking over a company, mergers and acquisitions. There's so much to be said about negotiating in business. Talk us through some of your early lessons in supplier negotiation as you jump-started your career.
Look, I think starting my career in PwC really helped with that because you have that customer. So you're always in the negotiation with your customer, and you're kind of providing a product and you're providing a service, and you're trying to create that kind of open and transparent relationship with your customers. So that really helped me kind of go through that now into the future with our discussions. I try to be open and transparent and be kind of honest and fair across most of the relationships I have with all our strategic partners, and that kind of really, rings true, and people like that, and people like to deal with people that are, that open about what's happening.
So in terms of commercial relationships and commercial partnerships, clearly you deal with that as well. What are the top 3 things, would you say, that a person who is successful in developing these partnerships and agreeing to a commercial structure with a partner, what should they keep in mind?
Look, I think they need to be honest about what they can deliver. I mean, your supplier or, strategic relationship, they're trying to get something out of it. So you have to be honest about what you actually are going to deliver for them. You need to be transparent about what the costs are. I'm always transparent with all of my advisors about what I expect from them and what I expect it to cost. I'm not afraid to pay for something, but you need to have that. You want to make sure that's clear up front. So I do that, and just delivering. I'm really focused on all my strategic partners and advisors to deliver what they've said. Otherwise, why are you in that relationship with them?
So I hear a very direct, matter-of-fact way of approaching things, which leads me to make an assumption about your leadership style, but I want to hear that from you. So if we were to talk about what leadership traits have served you well, what leadership style works well for you, and how you went about identifying that leadership style. Take us through a situation where you had to use those traits, and also how did you identify and say, that's me, that's how I lead. What did that look like?
So it was probably the previous role I had. So I was the global transformation leader of a healthcare company in Australia. And what was important with that, and especially when you're moving from a very manual process to digital transformation, is listening to what people's needs are. When you're working with people, you need to be very collaborative. You need to get the best out of all of your staff, you need to listen to their ideas. And you just need to take on board and discuss those together. But really, my leadership style then is quite direct, and it's about decision making. I am all about decision making. You have to own that decision, whether it's right or wrong. But if you do not make a decision, you're just letting it go. You have to make a decision. So I will, in the end, make the decision, but I'll bring people on that journey.
Talk to us about decision making. We know that there are a lot of folks who say, I need 100% of the right information before I make a decision. I heard a quote by Colin Powell, a former Secretary of State in the U.S., and he said that, I think it was something along the lines of, if you have 60% of the information, you have enough. If you have 90%, you took too long to make the decision. So go with the 60 or 70%. 40%, not enough, but you don't need 90. What's your thought on decision making? How much data, information do you need? How long should you wait? How many people should you involve in the decision-making process? What are your thoughts there?
Look, I think it depends on the decision you're making, but in transformation and change in our exploration company, we're moving from being a tiny explorer to being a company that's going to employ 900 people in production in Ghana. It's about, for me, it's 80-20. So I really like, if you're waiting for the final 20% of the information, it's going to take too long and cost too much. You can actually fix on the way. So, 80% of the work, 80% of the data is good enough for you to make a decision. And that really then comes down to the person to actually be confident in what their decision, and to be confident that there's going to be mistakes on the way. I don't expect everything to be perfect, but as long as people are open up front with that, you can fix and move on.
So being able to back into it. So I need to explain to you, hey, Amanda, this is how I got there. Is that kind of how you see things?
Yeah, absolutely. Or just discuss together, have a very collaborative style in the way that we make decisions. I'll make the final decision, but, generally everyone's got to that point already. But, the last 20% is really difficult to get to, especially on projects.
Okay, right. So do we not get to that at all? Or do we just say, we have 80, let's go?
You have 80, let's go, and then you do the final 20 on the way. Because you will change. What your plan is now will change over time, so you're better off just getting going.
Wow. So what I'm hearing is that you are embracing the collaborative work style. You understand that some folks need the 80%. Some people can make a good decision with 70. It sounds like you, as long as we can get there, we can back into it. That sounds good. This speaks a lot to an inclusive style of leadership as well. I'd love to know your overall thoughts about inclusivity, whether it be leadership style, decision style, whether we're talking ethnicity, gender, whether we're talking how a person comprehends information. What is your overall take about inclusivity? And if you want to speak to a specific example about a specific type, feel free to give us insight and context.
For me, it's about diversity of thought. So it doesn't matter all of those other things you talked about. It's actually being able to embrace different people's decision-making and thought processes, because that's where you get innovation. You cannot get innovation if you're all the same type, if you're all the same thinking. You will just get groupthink. You have to have different people involved in the process and different thoughts. So diversity of thought is something that I'm very passionate about.
I've heard a lot about when you're talking with people or have a group and they all come from the same type of school. They grew up in the same type of community. They went to the same type of religious organization. When you have same, that it's kind of challenging. But a way to get different is to get people who really are different in those ways. What do you think about that?
No, I agree totally. You need people from different backgrounds. You need people from different studies. You need people from different countries, different races, all of those things. But really, it's about people's skills. You obviously need skills, so obviously the best person for the job is who you need, but then you need to look around and make sure that you're not employing or working with someone that's exactly the same as you. You need challenge. You need challenge.
And speaking of challenge, you have such a clear, clean, direct style. I'm wondering about challenging conversations that you may have had to have with team members, partners that you're working with. For example, you know what, this just isn't working. Or I see the performance, I know we can do better, let's go. How does that conversation look for someone who is very direct and clear and data-driven? How do you have those difficult types of conversations with your team?
Look, you need to provide the background of, you've gone down a path that both you and the partner or the person you're working with or whoever it is recognize that something's not working. It doesn't come out of the blue. But being direct about that, they're waiting for that. A lot of people can't be direct, but people are waiting to have that conversation. In my previous transformation role, we had a big team. There was 14,000 people in the organisation in Australia. It was a $2.5 billion budget. It was huge. But, having that, direct approach with people and having that, not everyone made it. In a situation that is changing, not everyone likes change. It's really, amusing or an interesting insight is when you say, personally, I'm going to change, it's never for bad. You're always changing for good. But in an organisation, when you say change, everyone thinks negative. And it can be good, but you have to be able to embrace that.
I know that with today's culture in many societies, it can be quite litigious. HR seems to really, need to have an involvement there. So I'm wondering, with that being said, the change could be one that could be positive for the company, but the individual may not see it as positive. So in a culture where, there is loads of litigation, where HR is strict, there are regulations, as well as maintaining people's dignity when you're having these conversations. Is that back of mind for you? I need to be mindful. Is that something in the back of your mind?
Absolutely. You need to be very careful about how you have those conversations. But as I've said, if you've kind of talked along the way and you're communicating at all times, most people know those conversations you're about to have with them and are actually relieved. Most people don't enjoy working in an environment where they're not achieving or they're not doing what they're, not every company or every situation is good for everyone.
How did you get here? This style that you've adopted, you can tell I'm totally fascinated by it. This in a positive way, in a very positive way. Just being very clear and direct and to the point without going up and being ready to be clear and going up to back to be clear and say, let me take a step back. Let me kind of tap dance around this. How did you get there? I mean, was there a specific situation? Give me context. What led you to say, this is going to be me. I'm going to be clear and direct in the way that I communicate.
Look, I've always been very hardworking and kind of, wanting to cover everything I should. I've always taken on more responsibility than within my power. I've always done, if someone says something needs to be done, I'll do it. And that's from, very, new, straight out of school. So I've always done that. When I was training with the accounting firm, I had a very good friend who was actually deaf. I was going, how can you do this? Like, being deaf is like, and I just couldn't even, work out how that was happening and how they could keep going on. But he basically said to me, he said, Amanda, if you don't ask, you don't get. And I've done that my whole career. Generally, people aren't worried about what you're going to say or what you're going to do. They're very focused on themselves. So, I've always been direct and very open about it. If something needs to change, I'll talk about it. If something, I need to ask something, I'll ask it. In a collaborative way. I'm not kind of trying to be mean or anything, but, I don't have any, I can approach things like that.
And I love that example, having a friend who says, you know what, this is what you need to do. And you look at that friend saying, well, you know what you speak, so let me follow your lead there. I'm wondering if you've had a moment in your career where you can say, maybe it was very challenging, maybe it was the lowest point for you, but it's the best thing that could have happened to me because it was a growth opportunity. So I'm looking for what people call failure, for what people call a challenge, or simply a growth opportunity that at the time did not seem to be a positive one, but you learned since then that it was. Can you talk us through what that looked like and how you got through that? So I've had
two that have really changed and accelerated my career. One is with the healthcare company. I was only there for 4 months, but the CFO at the time said to me, Amanda, I need you to do this transformation project. It's going to be this, you can do it. And I'm like, well, I haven't got any experience in that. And he goes, no, we can do it. So I took that on and went forward that way. And his belief in me actually got that through. And the other one is with this company. Our founder sadly suddenly passed away. And within a week, the board had asked me to step up and be a director and take on more responsibility. I'd gone from being CFO to actually taking on the corporate, life and investor relations and being more involved in the actual project and the company. Terribly sad, but, it was an amazing opportunity that I've embraced and tried to kind of, do this for him and for the company and for Ghana.
How did you build out your learning path? So I'm assuming when you got the news and you were asked to step up, you went through step by step, looking at milestones you need to meet. What did that learning path look like, and how did you set those goals for yourself?
I've been very lucky to have a very supportive team around me, especially the executive chairman, Neil Herbert, who's over here, and be able to provide that, I suppose, network to talk things through and have discussions and being in that kind of open framework to actually work with. And that's been really supportive and actually helped through that process.
Amanda, do you have specific podcasts or publications, books, something that you go to that you look at for education, for inspiration? What is it that you're looking at on a regular basis? And I'm thinking about podcasts and books and periodicals, publications specifically, but do you have anything else that you go to educate yourself, to make sure that you stay on it in the industry?
To be honest, I don't, because I'm too busy.
Okay.
So I spend a lot of time. But in the past, when I was doing the transformation role, I had 4 years of that. So I did transformational conferences where I spoke at, went to, different people that would be able to provide work around projects. So I spent a lot of time then doing that research. But now for me, it's about people. So I look to the people that I work with in this industry and see what they're doing, talk to them, reach out. So there's lots of opportunities at this conference and conferences that I go to get that network and take bits of advice and insights from everyone I meet.
How do you engage with the mentees? I'm sure there are people coming up to you, asking you questions, saying, hey, can we talk quarterly? Can we talk every 6 months or something?
Absolutely.
How do you engage with that?
No, I do. And I've actually been a mentee myself for a top CFO of a building company in Australia. And that was kind of part of that transformation role. I was given that opportunity for a year and I took that on. And I equally, if anyone reaches out to me, I'm happy to have a conversation. I do a lot of that with my friendship group, I suppose, as well. So, and the people that work for me.
What do you find is the most common question, even across industries, that your mentees have?
Look, it's not a common question, but it's more people always have an issue and always have something they're trying to work through. And rather than give them advice about that particular issue, you've got to build them up and actually tell them they probably know the answer and they can work it through themselves and believe in yourself, really, and be that direct. No one is thinking about what your concern is except for you. You tend to kind of put that internally and you think everyone else can see it. But actually, everyone's just focused on themselves.
Have you heard of imposter syndrome? Where people, they say, okay, I'm in this senior position, that I'm getting paid this amount, I have these responsibilities, and they're going to find me out. And really, there's quite essentially nothing to find out. Is that something that you think that you hear a lot of people have, that they think they really can't move and own up to being who they actually are?
Oh, look, it may be out there. I suspect that, it's, as I said, people are more internalised what people think of them than actually what other people really think of you. No one's really looking at you and going, you're this, that, or the other. They're always focused on their own work and themselves, their own family, their own life.
So, Amanda, tell me, if you could talk to a younger version of yourself, go back to, say, 10-year-old Amanda, and give her some insight in how her life could be a little easier, what would you tell her?
Look, I think it's something I've learned over the last 10 years is that a career path is not this, you need to be this role, and then I'm going to be this, and then I'm going to be that. Once you kind of let that go, you've always got to be open to new opportunities. The biggest and the kind of, I suppose, most rewarding roles I've had have actually just happened, and I've embraced them rather than actually have this, plan for my life, be open to opportunities.
What about moving laterally or even moving, when I say backwards slightly in terms of title? Is that something that you would embrace for your mentees? And what situation would you think that would be the right thing to do?
The title doesn't mean a lot to me. It's about the role and what you're actually doing and if you've got to be learning.
So Amanda, what inspires you? What makes you put a smile on your face every day? What makes you, sing with the birds in the morning when you're getting up? What inspires Amanda?
Look, it's actually using your brain and actually having things that you need to work through. I like puzzles, and that's in business and anywhere. I like to be able to, be active with your brain, and that really kind of does inspire me.
Puzzles, I recommend New York Times Connections then.
I do like connections.
Oh, love it. Okay. A fellow connection.
Not always getting it, but depends on what a late night I've had.
Okay, we'll compare scores.
Yeah.
Great information talking about negotiations, how the most important negotiating tool in your toolbox should be honesty, transparency on cost specifically, and letting your partners know what you can deliver. And in terms of really focusing on leadership and what you look for, an 80-20 rule, this is a different 80-20 rule, having 80% of the data and information is enough. There might be 20% that's still up in the air, but we should be able to make decisions and move forward in a collaborative spirit with that 80-20. And also clearly really focusing on the fact that you can do it, that many times you're self-focused and other folks are focusing on themselves. So exactly. You can get through it and you can do it. Amanda, this was amazing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Great. And thank you for everyone who's in the audience, whether you're live or whether you're joining us through recording. Thank you so much for joining. Don't forget to subscribe to catch up on all of our other episodes. You can find those on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Podbean, SoundCloud, or wherever you get your content. If you want to find out more about other events that we're running in this space, it's easy to do. Simply go to the events section at fastmarkets.com. I'm Keisha Shreen. Thank you for joining us.